Welcome to Preparing for AI, the AI podcast for everybody, with your hosts Jimmy Rhodes and me, Matt Cartwright. We explore the human and social impacts of AI, looking at the impact on jobs, AI and sustainability, and most importantly, the urgent need for safe development of AI, governance and alignment.
Our freedom's just a loan, run by machines and drones. They've got us locked into their sights. Soon they'll control what's left inside. Welcome to Preparing for AI, with me, Jimmy Rhodes.
And me, Matt Cartwright.
Today we're going to take a look at the AI Incident Database. It's a site that's dedicated to indexing the collective history of harms, or near harms, realized in the real world by the deployment of artificial intelligence systems. Like similar databases in aviation and computer security, the AI Incident Database aims to learn from experience so we can prevent or mitigate bad outcomes. And with that, I'll hand over to Matt to discuss the first topic.
Thanks, Jimmy. So yeah, I thought this would be a really interesting way to look at some of the ways in which, AI is already causing harms in the world. And in line with our kind of expanded mission of the podcast to kind of raise awareness, this is something that I think is really useful, but is also really interesting because some of these examples are things that we kind of know about, but I guess to actually see or hear real world examples of how it's happening is equally kind of scary, but also thought provoking. So I'm going to start off. These are incidents 4 and 707. So an Uber autonomous vehicle in autonomous mode struck and killed a pedestrian in Tempe, Arizona in 2018. And a Tesla reportedly in self-driving mode crashed into a parked patrol vehicle in Fullerton, California, while the officer was responding to a fatal DUI crash. The officer narrowly escaped injury. The driver reports having been distracted by a cell phone and having relied on the Tesla's AI. The earlier crash involved a suspected DUI driver who killed a motorcyclist stopped at a red light.
My immediate question with all of this, and I'm not like trying to be AI optimist here, but how much more likely is an AI car likely to cause an accident than a human?
Could be less.
Exactly. This is kind of how I feel about this subject. It's like as soon as there's a crash with a Tesla and all the rest of it, like or an AI powered car, it's in the media immediately, and usually it's a pretty catastrophic crash, which is part of the problem. But how much more dangerous are these things than people?
Yeah, I think the point here, though, is that surely the marketing of self-driving cars, one of the ways in which it's marketed is that it's going to be safer. And I'm not saying that's the only thing. I mean, it also means you can get in the car while you're pissed out your face and you don't have to worry about, if you don't like driving. I mean, I personally, I'm okay with driving, but I'd rather never have to drive. I don't particularly enjoy driving, so I'd be quite happy in theory for a car to drive for me, but I wouldn't trust it. So I probably wouldn't let it happen. But I think for me, like part of the idea is that they're supposed to be safer. And if you look at the reports, insurance premiums are going up. There are more and more accidents in the US last year, or in California last year, accidents increased by 19% above 2022. So whatever the reason for that is, maybe we don't go into that now, but whatever the reason for that is, there's apparently a need to make driving safer. So isn't that one of the reasons why automated vehicles are supposed to be being developed?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it feels like an area where, okay, there's a lot of skepticism and there's a lot of distrust, but ultimately, if the ultimate version of the self-driving car is something that basically does not cause accidents. And there's a huge amount of complications in that. And part of that is that self-driving cars have to learn to drive on roads that also involve humans. And so it becomes infinitely more complex. Like if you could just switch over to self-driving cars where every car is driven by a an AI or a computer, then it would probably be much more straightforward. But there's this kind of like weird interim period where you have to have AI cars that are interacting with humans, and humans are unpredictable, and therefore AI has to learn how to drive in unpredictable circumstances. And so it feels a little bit like that to me, where like the ultimate version of this is self-driving cars that are much safer than where every car is driven by a self-driving car. This happened in what was the film with Will Smith, artificial intelligence film with Will Smith?
I Am Legend.
No, it wasn't.
Men in Black.
It wasn't.
Noodle Mouth.
You're winding me up now.
Wall-E. Terminator 2.
I've lost the plot.
Terminator 3.
I've lost the plot.
Should we move on?
Yes.
So second up is Incident 738. So a Department for Work and Pensions, this is in the UK, algorithm wrongly flagged over 200,000 UK housing benefit claims as high risk, resulting in unnecessary investigations. 2/3 of these flag claims were legitimate, causing wasted public funds and stress for claimants. Despite initial success in a pilot, the algorithm's real-world performance fell short. This incident highlights the risk of over-reliance on automated systems in welfare, well, I would argue in any administration. And that was from this year, 2024.
So in that situation, where's the benefit of having AI involved?
I mean, I kind of think, this is one of those where, yeah, okay, but it doesn't mean it's always going to be like that. And as we talk about often, things are not at the end point yet. So just because the algorithm didn't work right at this point, well, okay, so we tweak it and make it better next time. I think where I would be almost more concerned here is if the algorithm is wrongly flagging it, it's rather than saving work, it's not only created the problem, but it's created a load more work. So it's not saved anything. Eventually, I mean, yes, okay, there's a lot of stress on those claimants, but eventually it probably gets sorted out. But I think where there's a problem here is the massive waste of public funds, because the algorithm has not only failed to do its job, but it's now created a load of mess for people to clear up.
And I'll be honest, I feel like this is an area where algorithms, when you're talking about things on a human level, where you need a human decision at the end of it. So where are these algorithms really helping in this kind of situation?
Yeah. I mean, in this one, they're not. But like I say, I'm sort of taking the optimistic view here. I think that the algorithm should be able to, flag them as high risk. And the fact that there's been this incident is not a reason to not use it. It's just a reason to tweak it and make it better.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I see what you're saying. I think the problem for me is that when you're dealing with human situations and human problems where there's that, where ultimately it's a very human outcome, for me, it's kind of, maybe AI can perform a level of triaging and all the rest of it, but there's always going to be a human in the loop. There's always going to be a human in the loop. And so why shouldn't a human always just review every single case and every single incident? Because I just feel like an AI here is kind of like an extra step in the process that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, but isn't it in this example? And I chose this example not because I think it's a particularly shocking incident, but because I think it shows how algorithms are not, then like I say, they're not at the point yet where they can completely be trusted. But I think in this example, the algorithm should make things more efficient and should make them better. We should be in a situation really where we can use the algorithm to reduce the number of, like you're saying, a person needs to look at every one, but isn't what we're trying to get here to reduce, because that's not particularly interesting work, having to look through all those claims. We're looking at being able to flag what's high risk, what's low risk, red, amber, green.
Yeah.
And then be able to spend more time on the things that need to be spent time on, and be able to streamline some of the other work.
Yeah, and algorithms have a lot of benefit there, but there's also a lot of dangers, and this is where it's really tricky, because when you put your trust in these algorithms, unless they're perfect, then you run the risk of, you know, putting someone in that red category where actually they should never have been in that category. And I think this is the problem, is like it's a really nuanced thing, and you know, I mean, typically insurance companies do this. Like, insurance companies have done this for years. It's not a new thing. It's not like something that's been driven by AI. Insurance companies, you know, they just put you in a pot, basically based on where you live, what postcode you're in, all sorts of different stuff. And that's probably not fair in a lot of situations. So it's kind of like, how do you want to balance that scale?
Incident 734. An audit by NewsGuard revealed that leading chatbots, including ChatGPT-4, U.com's Smart Assistant, and others, repeated Russian disinformation narratives in 1/3 of their responses. These narratives originated from a network of fake news sites created by John Mark Dougan, I think. The audit tested 570 prompts across 10 AI chatbots, showing that AI remains a tool for spreading disinformation despite efforts to prevent misuse. I mean, this is not really news, but I thought it was a good example because it's something that we've talked about on the last, or in the last few weeks when we talked about the election interference.
Yeah, and this is a massive potential looming problem with AI. Crap in, crap out is like the simplest way to put it. These we talked about it a little bit earlier on the previous podcast. I feel like the way that data is curated that goes into these AI models, you know, for example, ChatGPT, we don't know what it's been trained on. It could have been trained on all of 4chan, all of Reddit, all of this stuff that has tons of disinformation built into it.
I mean, we know that Grok, the other Grok, is being trained on all the data in Twitter, X,
everything.
And I think Reddit data is being used for one of the models. So
yep.
Like, it is literal crap is going in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the stuff that goes into large language models is kind of frightening, and we don't even know what's going in there. And so is it a surprise that it's spitting out Russian disinformation? Well, if Russian disinformation was built into the model, into the training data.
I think it's almost, if Russian disinformation exists, then it's been built in a model. In the same way as, you know, it's not just Russia. Any disinformation, anything, if it exists, it's probably built into a model somewhere.
Yeah. And if I mean, in a broader sense, like if information on the internet in general is slightly left-leaning because more people that are left-leaning put information on the internet, like they're more willing to express their views and their viewpoints, then all of the models that we're talking about are going to be more left-leaning. And that's I use that as an example because the feeling is that actually these models are slightly left-leaning, which is a different problem with society and all the rest of it. But we don't know what's going into these models, and that is a challenge.
And we don't know how they're working when it goes in as well, which is another challenge. Incident 702. A deepfake video of State Department spokesman Matthew Miller falsely suggested that Belgorod was a legitimate target for Ukrainian strikes. This disinformation spread on Telegram and Russian media, misleading the public and inciting tensions. US officials condemned the deepfake. This incident is an example of the threat of AI-powered disinformation and hybrid attacks. Similar to the last example, I know, but this is a very, very specific example relating to the war in Ukraine. So I thought it was a good example to bring this one up.
Yeah, and so, I mean, what I would cite with this is, has anyone seen, if anyone hasn't seen, I think it was BBC's production, The Capture, which actually I think it's in its second or third season now. Like, this is a fantastic illustration of kind of like how this stuff's going to go in the future. Like, we're not far away from being able to deepfake everything, absolutely everything. And so how do you trust information that you find online? Like, whether it's video, audio, images, text, whatever.
Incident 700. Meta's AI chatbots have reportedly begun entering online communities on Facebook, providing responses that mimic human interaction. These chatbots, often uninvited, disrupt the human connection critical for support groups by giving misleading or false information and pretending to share lived experiences. Wow. I think this is a really cool one. I knew about this already, but it's been pretty widely reported in media, but I think this is a really interesting one.
I think it's really interesting, but I also feel like Facebook and Twitter and things like that, like they already feel like that to me anyway, even without AI.
Yeah, it's kind of like we've said, you should take everything with more than a pinch of salt and almost presume that everything is false unless proven otherwise. But it's this idea of, the bit that got me actually was the idea that they were kind of entering the community uninvited. I mean, sometimes these descriptions, they make it out, oh, it must be sentient to have entered that chat room. I mean, that's not how it works. It's entered the chat room because it's probably meant to be doing that. It's meant to be, going in and out and offering an option. I mean, I saw some stuff where it had commented as well. That Meta's chatbot had commented on some posts on Facebook, which it had not been asked to do. So it had responded, maybe it was around bullying or something like that. It responded to a post. But I think that is around how it's been trained, and that's what it's been told to do. So the issue is not necessarily that the AI has suddenly, gone rogue and gone and entered those chat rooms, but that they haven't programmed it very well in the kind of, not the training data, but in the I'm not sure how to put it, in the kind of the second part where you do the reinforcement learning.
Oh yeah, exactly. Reinforcement learning, like so the kind
where
of
the person
alignment.
Involved,
I think
basically.
I think it's alignment.
It's part of the alignment. Yeah,
a part of the alignment. But how do we know? I mean, these are Facebook chatbots that are produced by Meta, presumably, and presumably
Yes.
are labeled as AI. But how do you know that the comments that you're reading on Facebook that aren't labeled AI are not AI? Like, that's my bigger worry with this, is that how much of the stuff that you read online and comments and all the rest of it could be generated by AI that you don't even know about, that you don't even know there's AI.
Well, 100%. And I've talked quite a lot about my own battles with trying to work out what's real and what's not. And I have moved to a point where I'm, if not assuming, at least questioning that any comment, even not just comments, but actually even if you're looking at written media, is that article even being written by a person? Not necessarily, whether it's AI, but whether it's a bot, whether it's being created as misinformation. So,
Or AI assisted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Incident 604. This is a really worrying one. This is from 2023. So a Quebec man was sentenced to over 3 years in prison for using AI deepfake technology to produce synthetic child pornography. He created videos by superimposing children's faces onto other bodies, adding to the challenge of policing digital sexual exploitation. This case marks a disturbing use of AI in criminal activities, raising concerns about digital safety and the vulnerability of children's images online.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I almost think maybe we just leave that one there rather than trying to comment on it. I think it kind of speaks for itself.
It's a super complicated and tricky area, which I almost don't want to get into, but it's something that we have to face, which is that with the proliferation of AI and AI image generation, and at the end of the day, like whether closed source models like DALL-E and some of the big models like Midjourney, they'll refuse to generate these kinds of images, but there are open source models that will allow you to produce this kind of imagery. And I don't know what the solution is there. Like it's a really tricky subject area where, like you say, we almost don't want to get into it, but it needs addressing. And I this is kind of one for lawmakers, I think, where it's like, okay, is AI generated images in this respect kind of worse than the real thing? Like, I don't know. It's complicated.
I just want to finish this one off on this is from Zvi Moshevitz's Don't Worry About the Vase, or Don't Forget the Vase. One of those two. Me and Jimmy have serious brain problems. From his, I think it was last week, actually not this week, but last week's Substack. So this was a quote, not from him, from someone called John Arnold. My theory is that deepfake nudes, while deeply harmful today, will soon end sextortion and the embarrassment of having compromised real nude pics online. Historically, most pics circulated without consent were real, so the assumption upon seeing one was that. AI tools have made it so easy to create deepfakes that soon there will be a flood. The default assumption will be that a picture is fake, thus greatly lowering any shame or even the real ones. People can ignore sextortion attempts of real photos because actually audiences will believe everything is fake. Hopefully, that's where we end up. It's not an ideal world, but it's better than the alternative. Incident 255. ShotSpotter audios were previously admitted to convict an innocent black man in a murder case in Chicago, resulting in his nearly 1 year long arrest before being dismissed by prosecutors as insufficient evidence. I'm not actually sure why it needs to quote that it was a black man, because the issue is that they were using audio to convict an innocent man in a murder case. But I read it out as it's in the database written like that.
Well, I think it's obviously due to, like, in my view, it's due to racial tensions in the US and the fact that, like, there's a lot of complications around the fact that black people are far more likely to get incarcerated and all the rest of it. There's a lot to unpack there, but
this is a 2020 incident as well. So you bang on with that because that was right in the heart of Black Lives Matter.
Exactly, and it's notoriously been a historic problem in the US. But I think irrespective of the skin color of the person involved, this is something that potentially could increasingly become a problem. I mentioned it not that long, like a couple of minutes ago. But The Capture is a really, really good BBC drama that literally delves quite deep into this kind of area.
Incident 234. The Waze app, that's WAZE, was blamed by Los Gatos town residents for contributing to high wildfire hazard risks via allegedly routing, depending on whether you're British or American, weekend beach-going drivers through their neighbourhoods, effectively choking off the single escape route in the event of a medical emergency or wildfire. And that's from 2019.
So, sorry, I didn't...
Yeah, so basically the artificial intelligence on the app, Waze app, I imagine is some kind of navigation system. So at a time of high wildfire hazard risks, it had routed people through the town and basically created a choking off of the town at a time when people may need to escape because of wildfires. So I think this example, it's not, when I first read this, I actually thought that it was saying that it was sending people on a route through wildfires. But I think that the risk there is the same, that the artificial intelligence algorithm is not going to be able to understand the nuance of those kind of things. And that's why I think this was a really interesting example is, you would need a person to even think about the fact that sending them through the town would be an issue. Only a human would think about, and not any old human, a particular human with a particular set of knowledge would think about the fact that, well, hang on, we need to keep that exit clear because this time is a particularly risky time for wildfires. So it's a good example because it's where an algorithm perhaps is not able to, and we always say, let's not say ever, but in its current format, algorithms are not able to have that kind of nuance. And it could have created a major issue.
And I feel like this definitely applies to AI, but I don't think it is AI. As in what I mean by that is like these algorithms exist in apps already, and they're not really AI. What we're talking about is a GPS app that sees that there isn't any traffic going through this town, and then it diverts people through this town because it thinks it
sort of is AI.
Well, it kind
in
of
a form.
is.
It's not AI in the context of what we usually talk about, but it is artificial intelligence because it's not a human that's making. It's an algorithm that's not a human, so it's a kind of AI.
Yeah, it's more of an algorithm, but I and that's a limitation of not enough information, because if it had the additional information to say don't go through this town because it's on fire basically, then it wouldn't do that. But this is exactly the alignment problem that we've talked about a little bit previously, which is that how do you perfectly align an AI or one of these algorithms, because it's not perfect and it doesn't have all the information available to it, and it doesn't really understand what we're looking for, and it doesn't have that human touch.
Incident 444. This goes right back to 2003. Acting on the recommendation of their Patriot missile system, American Air Force mistakenly launched the missile at an ally UK Tornado fighter jet, which killed 2 crew members on board.
Yeah, I mean, this is way more scary. And the last example you gave was kind of scary, but this is way more scary. Like, as if the military start introducing and implementing AI in their systems, then at what point does that go wrong? And this example is kind of illustrative of the potential dangers there.
Yeah, I mean, it speaks for itself. I think it's not one that we need to go into much detail on, but just to say, as we become more advanced, the algorithms and the AI systems become more advanced, and in one sense, there is, potentially, they will be more safe. On the other hand, as they become more advanced, there is far more likelihood of them to, make a decision, and then being empowered to make that decision means the counter argument is it's more likely for them to, do something similar and on a larger scale. I mean, this is tragic. It killed 2 members, but it's a one-off. We could potentially be looking at, with automated systems, mass launch of swarm drones or missiles with almost unthinkable consequences.
Yeah, and it sounds horrendous, and I hope it doesn't come to pass, but I don't think it'll be that long before we see this kind of news article or something like this in the news, where it's like AI made a decision to wipe out, a town or something like that. And I hope that doesn't come to pass, but my feeling is that it won't be that far down the road.
Incident 724. 3 reportedly fake journals published by the Addleton Academic Publishers manipulated Scopus ratings by extensively cross-citing each other and using AI-generated papers filled with buzzwords. These journals, placed in the top 10 of Scopus's 2023 Site Score Philosophy list, featured fake authors, affiliations, and grant numbers. This manipulation pushed legitimate journals to lower tiers, affecting academic evaluations and awards.
Affecting academic evaluations and awards, you said at the end there. So this is, again, this is not necessarily something that's just born out of AI. There are scientific papers that have been influenced by dubious kind of results and dubious academia in the past. But I think AI definitely magnifies the possibilities here.
Yeah, I mean, in this example, because we don't know, I guess, what the journals are about, it's maybe not a huge issue in terms of its, the consequences of it are not huge. But if that was a article about, I don't know, a military article, a medical article, you can think of examples where the cross-citing each other and pushing themselves up a list of charts and getting themselves increased grants, and the manipulation just creating essentially more and more not necessarily that it's more risky, but just creating more and more hype around it. And then we talked, I think, a couple of weeks ago about this idea of a large language model that pulls all its data from scientific articles and journal articles, and how it's completely trustworthy. Well, this shows that already it's not completely trustworthy, and that happened this year. So this is a topical one.
Yeah, and I mean, like, just quickly on that, I think this is not necessarily a problem that's been created by AI. There's previously been problems with scientific and like with journals and scientific journals and even scientific publications. And so, but I think AI magnifies the problem. Yeah.
Incident 708. An AI transcription software error in a Genoa bribery investigation incorrectly recorded illicit financing instead of licit financing, which could have significantly impacted the case. This mistake, discovered during a review, is an example of the risks of relying on AI in judicial settings. I chose this one because the translation episode that we did with Chris, he talked about how when he was translating Japanese legal documents using Party A, Party B, and getting those mixed up could completely change the whole document and have huge implications. And I thought this was a really good example that fitted in with that, where it's two letters, it's an I and an L at the beginning, is the difference. But in this example, it actually, I think it was discovered, so it did not affect the case. But potentially you could see something being thrown out of court for that.
Yeah, and again, like, if you start, this comes back to, I think, the episode with Eddie, really, where he was saying, you ultimately, like, and it wasn't just Eddie, but like previous episodes, where taking the human out of the loop completely, but like you start to look at generating massive problems, because AI just doesn't, even the most sophisticated AI is capable of making mistakes, and unfortunately doesn't have that human kind of like, oh, I just need to double check that. I just need to actually just give it another once over. And what am I trying to say here? It's like that kind of like human intuition that says, hang on, there's something not quite right with this.
It's the kind of gut check. I remember my dad saying this about how when you've made a decision, you do that kind of like one final check in your gut, and something sometimes doesn't feel right. It's that something doesn't quite feel right about this. I just noticed something, and then when you go back, you pick it up because you're just so used to it. Maybe algorithms will pick that up in time, and maybe this is again an example of one that as they become better, this will be less of a problem, but it is a concern. And we said, I think in the legal episode, about how it only takes one incident like that to completely destroy trust.
Yeah. And
once you've destroyed trust, then whoever's creating that model or creating any of the models, it's going to take a long, long time to rebuild that.
Yeah. And just to elaborate, to sort of like continue that a little bit, like, this is something I've experienced, and everyone's experienced at work, where like you're so entrenched in what you're doing. Like with a lot of the stuff that I do, I work with data, and you're so entrenched in what you're doing that you don't notice the simplest mistake. And then you present it to your boss and they're like, hang on. And they just notice something that's not quite
you've
right.
Been submerged in it.
Yeah. And I feel like that's the thing with like these AIs, is like they make that same mistake where they're like, they don't pick up on something nuanced, and then you show it to somebody and they're like, well, hang on a minute, this clearly isn't right. And so it's a human thing as well, I guess, is what I'm saying. But yeah, like there is a danger where you just say, okay, we trust the AI, and then it's going to make potentially huge mistakes that have huge ramifications. And it's just down to like that, what you said, like an I and an N versus an N and an I.
Incident 676. A deepfake video falsely depicted President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. of the Philippines ordering an attack on China, exacerbating tensions in the West Philippine Sea. The video, designed to mislead, was promptly debunked by the Presidential Communications Office. Now, I think this is one of those where most people would probably see that this was a deep fake. And I think you would hope that certainly people in any positions of importance where this could have an effect would see it as a deep fake. But some people would see that, and, you know, whether it's debunked or not, maybe they never see that debunking. Well, and it sticks with them, right?
Yeah. And this, I mean, literally our episode on election interference, it talks about this exactly. And the problem is, okay, some of the stuff in that episode was fairly simplistic and not that sophisticated, but at what point does it, you know, at what point do we not know? At what point do we not understand or know that it's a deep fake? And that's quite frightening.
Incident 719. On April the 4th, 2024, X, formerly known as Twitter, AI chatbot Grok, with a K, generated a false headline claiming Iran strikes Tel Aviv with heavy missiles, which was then prompted on X's trending news section. This misinformation, fueled by user spamming of fake news, falsely indicated a serious international conflict. The incident highlighted a significant risk associated with relying on AI for content curation and demonstrated the potential for widespread dissemination of harmful misinformation.
Yeah, and I mean, similar to my last comment, this is going to become an increasing problem. It's going to become more and more frequent. It's going to be in video, audio, text form. You know, this is something that I don't know what the solution is and what the answer is long term, but it's going to become a increasing problem.
There's a theme to a lot of these, and it might seem like we're kind of going over the same thing. The reason I thought this one was interesting was because the way it had been picked up by the trending news section. So you've got, you know, the chatbot creating the false headline, but then you've got the algorithm picking that up, and you've got a kind of cycle, then user spamming of fake news, and then that pushes it up the chain even further. And so without, again, a human in the loop to kind of pick this stuff up, or maybe a different AI that's picking it up, it's pushed up really quickly. And I think when you see something that is at the top of the news section, I would probably think that meant it was creditable. Yeah, I think credible. Sorry. Yeah. I think that would make me think it was credible. And, you know, maybe not now, because maybe I'm changing my mind, but a few weeks ago anyway, I probably would have said it was credible. I should say I don't use Twitter or X anymore because it's hell on earth. But
the level of cynicism you have to have nowadays, and to be honest, like, this is where, like, again, going back a few episodes, we've talked about how you can't believe mainstream media, but actually, for me, I'm turning more towards mainstream media because their principles and the way they do journalism, at least, is like, you feel like it's a bit more trustworthy.
Well, also, I kind of feel like maybe I'd just rather take the blue pill. Yeah. Because you take the red pill, you go down such a rabbit hole. At least with mainstream media, you're being shielded from some of the stuff that could be true or could be absolute crap, and you don't know. And so at least with mainstream media, it kind of feels like once you've picked your poison, at least you're being given stuff that is within a kind of set of boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. So you know, if you're reading left wing, right wing media, whatever, you have to sort of be aware that it's got that slant. But like, there is a place for like genuine, like, journalism that you can trust.
You see this stuff out there a lot on social media about, you know, oh, this person's awake, they've woken up, they know the truth. Fuck off. Fuck off. Like, none of us know the truth. That's the reality. None of us know the truth.
100%, yeah.
Like, we all believe some spam, some bullshit, and we all believe something that, you know, maybe it is true, maybe it isn't true. but we're all biased.
Yeah.
So
Of course we are, yeah.
it's just this idea that some of us, we know the truth. No, you don't. You don't fucking know anything, basically.
I agree. Like, yeah.
Unless you work for the Department of Defense or the CIA or MI6, you don't know anything that's going on. So, don't be so proud of yourself.
Yeah, and that's the best way to think in general, especially in in a world that we're about to enter into where anything can be fabricated. Is I don't know anything, and start from that point of view, and then try and figure out.
Be humble.
Be humble. Be humble, and try and build a ladder. Try and build some kind of like worldview that is at best, 70-80%.
We're going to finish on incident 662. This is my personal favorite.
Is this the Roswell one?
No, this is my personal favorite.
We didn't land on the moon?
Well, like we just said, take everything with a pinch of salt. Be cynical about everything. Don't get my dad started on it. He's definitely sure that we landed on the moon. So when China lands on the moon next year, we'll be able to say
we were there first.
Well, not us, because we didn't go.
I didn't go,
and we're not American either.
I actually went.
You went.
Yeah.
When the Chinese go, they can see if the footprints are still there. So back to incident 662. An AI-powered website of the Washington State Lottery inadvertently produced a softcore pornographic image of a user, leading to the site's immediate shutdown out of caution. There's no more context to this example than that. I don't know how it created this image of the user, how it knew what the user looked like, but it did. And so my prize for my favorite incident goes to the Washington State Lottery. Well done.
Yeah, I have nothing more to say or add.
So I guess that's it. This is a shorter episode than usual. We'll maybe revisit this in a few months' time or a year's time when there's some more stuff out there. I mean, there's only about 800 entries, so this obviously doesn't cover everything, and it relies on people to put their entries in there. But it's a really interesting read. You can have a look. AI Incident Database. It's got some funny things in there. It's got some really troubling things in there. It obviously doesn't cover everything, but I think these are some good examples. And the thing is, they fit with the themes of things that we talk about on the podcast every week. The one that we talked about, disinformation and election interference, I think that one really kind of sums up the things that are here and now. So forget the existential threats for a minute. These are the kind of things that are affecting, the world and affecting people's lives on a day-to-day basis. So check it out if you're interested. If you're not, then we will check it out again for you in maybe 6 months' time. So thanks everyone for listening. This will be an interesting song today. So enjoy this one, and we will see you next week.
Binary whispers, silicon dreams. AI is growing faster than it seems. Incidents logged, a digital trail. Stories of triumph, stories of fail. Archiving the future, one glitch at a time. Learning from errors, the machine's paradigm. Every bug, every flaw, every line of code, guiding us forward down this digital road. Facial recognition gone astray. Chatbots learning the wrong things to say. Autonomous cars in a moment of doubt. The database catches what we can't figure out. Archiving the future, one glitch at a time. Learning from errors, the machine's paradigm. Every bug, every flaw, every line of code, guiding us forward down this digital road. Facial recognition gone astray. Chatbots learning the wrong things to say. Autonomous cars in a moment of doubt. The database catches what we can't figure out. Archiving archiving the future, one glitch at a time. Learning from errors, the machine's paradigm. Every bug, every flaw, every line of code, guiding us forward down this digital road. Biased algorithms, unintended harm, false positives setting off the alarm, privacy breaches, data exposed. The incidents pile up, but nobody knows. Archiving the future, one glitch at a time. Learning from errors, the machine's paradigm. Every bug, every flaw, every line of code, guiding us forward down the digital road. In the static between zeros and ones lies the wisdom of 1,000 suns. Every failure, every success teaches us how to progress. From deep mind streams to GPT's prose, the database watches as AI grows. Accountability in the age of machines, transparency in a code unseen. Archiving the future, one glitch at a time. Learning from errors, the machine's paradigm. Every bug, every flaw, every line of code, guiding us forward down this digital road. AI incident database, learning, evolving, protecting. Every failure, everything's amateur, predicting.